They were supposed to heal, but they became prisons for the mind. Corridors that never end, lined with shadows that breathe. Rooms that swallow screams, and sometimes, whispers call back your name. Patients vanished without a trace, their cries still echoing in the darkness. Tonight, we step inside Australia's most haunted asylums, where the dead never rest, the walls remember every scream, and something still watches. Dare to enter, if you can survive the whispers. If the whispers still haunt you, like, subscribe, and hit the bell, so you can face more of Australia's darkest secrets with us. 1. Airedale Lunatic Asylum, Ararat, Victoria. Even before you reach Airedale, the air changes, thick, cold, and heavy, like it knows who you are. Built in the 1860s to treat the insane, it became a prison for the forgotten. Over 13,000 souls died here, most buried in nameless graves on the hill behind the asylum. Locals whisper that the screams never really stopped, they simply learned to echo in silence. The walls are stained with time. Corridors cracked, uneven floors creak under your weight. Rusted stretchers lean in corners, and faded patient files scatter across dusty halls. At night, shadows seem to move deliberately, almost watching. In 2017, Liam joined a late-night ghost tour. Everything felt normal, until they entered the women's ward. It felt colder than the rest of the building, he said. Then I heard someone breathing right next to my ear. I turned, no one. The guide's flashlight flickered, and for a second, a pale, hollow-eyed face stared back from the doorway. The ghost of Dr. Keating lingers in the surgery room, locals say, known for experimental treatments, crude brain operations without anesthesia. Some nights, a faint smell of burning flesh drifts through the empty corridors. At midnight, lights flicker, voices whisper your name. Some tourists faint, others run screaming into the night. Locals warn, never call out loud inside Airedale. They might answer back. If you ever see Airedale's massive shadow atop the hill after dark, don't look too long. Something up there is already looking back at you. 2. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, Mayday Hills, Beechworth, Victoria. A strange calm surrounds Beechworth Asylum. Tall pines sway in the wind, yet every rustle feels like a sigh. This place once held over 1,000 souls, each broken, frightened, and forgotten. Built in 1867 to heal minds, it instead swallowed them whole. Over 9,000 patients died here, many buried without names. Locals call it the Hill of Whispers. Inside, time behaves strangely. Clocks stopped decades ago. Hallways echo with footsteps that belong to no living being. The air smells of damp stone and old medicine, and sometimes, the faint sound of crying drifts from empty rooms. In 2019, Nurse Eliza visited on an after-dark tour, carrying a recorder to capture evidence. Halfway through the men's ward, a metal door slammed violently, though no one touched it. Then her recorder picked up a faint, trembling voice whispering, "Don't leave me here." Eliza froze. Her flashlight flickered. At the end of the hall, a woman in a faded blue hospital gown stood silently, head tilted, eyes black as night. She didn't move, didn't blink, then vanished. The wing once housed female patients who never saw daylight again. Some nights, caretakers hear humming, an old lullaby drifting through the empty corridors. Windows sometimes glow faintly blue, and standing by the gates after dark, you might feel a breath on your neck. Locals say Beechworth doesn't want to be forgotten. It wants to remember you, one old resident said. Once you walk those halls, something might decide you belong there too. Even now, when the wind rustles the pine needles, it carries whispers of the lost. Ghosts of forgotten patients wander the halls, waiting for visitors to hear their cries, to see their hollow eyes staring through the darkness. Bravery is required to enter. Curiosity is dangerous. And if you hear the soft call of someone, faint, pleading, resist turning back. Some voices want you to stay, forever. 3. Kenmore Asylum, Goulburn, New South Wales. Kenmore Asylum was built to lock away madness. But some doors were never meant to close, and some cries never meant to end. Perched on a lonely hill outside Goulburn, the red brick asylum seems peaceful from a distance, almost beautiful. But the closer you get, the heavier the silence becomes. It isn't calm. It's watchful. The walls seem to breathe, absorbing every sound, every sorrow. Opened in 1895, Kenmore was a hospital for the insane, though for many, it was a prison for life. Patients slept in freezing rooms, strapped to beds. Their screams echoed down stone corridors, bouncing from wall to wall, until they became part of the building itself. Many never left. Some never truly left. In 2016, photographer Daniel and two friends explored Kenmore, cameras in hand. At first, everything seemed normal, dust motes floating in the stale air, the faint smell of antiseptic lingering. Then they reached the East Wing, where hydrotherapy rooms stood abandoned, the faintest scent of old medicine still in the air. Then they heard it, a faint, broken laughter. At first, they thought it was the wind. But Daniel's camera caught her, a shadowy figure in the doorway. Long hair hung in front of a pale face. A hospital gown, head tilted slightly, watching. She didn't move, didn't blink. When he lifted the camera, the light flickered, and she vanished. Later, one frame remained burned into the footage, a blurred white shape, staring directly at the lens. Locals call her the Lady of Ward C, the spirit of a patient who died during an ice bath treatment. On stormy nights, neighbors claim to see her pale face at the windows, silently beckoning. Walk too close to the gate after midnight, and you might hear your name whispered quietly, slowly, like she's waiting for you. Those who do, never forget it, the feeling of being watched, of something lingering just behind the shadows, waiting for the next visitor to step inside. At Kenmore, the madness didn't end with the patients. It seeped into the walls, the floors, the very air. And it waits. Always. For Callan Park Hospital for the Insane, Lilyfield, New South Wales. Beneath Sydney's bright skyline lies a place the city tries hard to forget, Callan Park Hospital for the Insane. Hidden behind thick trees, its crumbling sandstone walls whisper stories that no one dares to hear. Built in the late 1800s, Callan Park was meant to heal minds. But inside, despair reigned. Rooms were cold, treatments cruel, patients strapped, shocked, silenced. A century of suffering soaked into the walls, until even the bricks seemed to breathe back the pain. Decades after its closure, the air still feels heavy, as if the past is alive, watching every intruder. In 2018, security guard Nathan took a night shift patrolling the old halls during a stormy night. His flashlight flickered as shadows danced across peeling paint and cracked floors. Suddenly, he heard slow, dragging footsteps behind him. He called out, thinking it was another guard. No answer. Then he saw him, a man standing halfway down the hallway, pale, in an old hospital uniform. His eyes were empty, mouth trembling, whispering words Nathan could not hear. I froze, Nathan recalled later. Then, he walked right into the wall. Some nights, drivers passing by see faces pressed against broken windows, mouths frozen in silent screams. Others hear soft crying carried on the wind, footsteps that vanish when approached. Callan Park isn't haunted by ghosts alone, it is haunted by the memory of pain, cruelty, and sorrow that refuses to leave. Locals warn, never linger too long near the abandoned halls after dark. Some say if you stand quietly in the garden, you can hear a faint voice calling your name, soft but insistent, desperate for someone to listen. Even now, the building seems to watch, waiting. Sometimes, a door slams on its own, or a shadow shifts where no one stands. It is said that the lost souls of Callan Park wander endlessly, seeking a release that never comes. At Callan Park, the past never truly dies. It only waits, patient, observing, and whispering its dark secrets. If you dare to step inside, listen closely, because someone, somewhere, might still be calling for help, from the other side of the darkness. 5. Gladesville Mental Hospital, Tarban Creek Asylum, Sydney, New South Wales. On the banks of the Parramatta River stands Gladesville Mental Hospital, once known as Tarban Creek Asylum. From the outside, its sandstone walls look peaceful, almost majestic. But inside, peace never lived here. Built in 1838 to heal troubled minds, Gladesville quickly became a place of horror. Patients were chained to iron beds, locked in dark cells, and subjected to cruel experiments that broke more minds than they cured. Over 1,000 souls were buried in unmarked graves on the grounds, nameless, forgotten, and restless. Even decades after its closure, the hospital seems alive. Shadows stretch too long. Cold spots cling to hallways. Lights flicker without cause. Sometimes, faint whispers curl through the empty corridors, echoing like the breath of those who never left. In 2015, filmmaker Josh entered the abandoned asylum with a small crew to document its history. They laughed at first, exploring dusty corridors, their flashlights cutting through darkness. But as they reached the old surgical ward, the air grew thick, heavy, suffocating. A tray clattered to the floor, though no one was near it. Then a faint, trembling voice rose from the shadows. "Get out." Josh swung the camera, and in the dim light, he saw it, a dark shape dragging what looked like a lifeless arm across the floor. The lights flickered violently, and the whisper changed. "Don't leave me." They ran, leaving behind equipment, notes, and a sense of disbelief. Later, reviewing the footage, the audio revealed static, but beneath it, the whisper repeated, over and over. "Don't leave me." Locals believe the voice belonged to Mary, a patient locked in isolation until death. Her grave never marked, her presence never faded. Even today, passers-by say they hear soft crying drifting from the river, carried by the mist. Gladesville's wards have been converted into offices and apartments, but the whispers remain. Lights flicker, footsteps echo, and sometimes the walls seem to lean closer, listening, remembering. At Gladesville, the past did not die. It learned how to whisper, how to wait, how to remind anyone who dares enter that some souls can never be freed. If you listen carefully, you might hear them too, the lost, the restless, the ones who never left. And when the wind moves through the empty halls, it carries their secrets, their sorrow, and their warning. 6. Larundel Mental Asylum, Bundoora, Victoria. Larundel Mental Asylum stands as one of Melbourne's most haunting remnants of the past. From the outside, its red brick walls and sprawling lawns suggest an old, forgotten estate. But step inside, and the air feels alive, heavy, cold, and filled with the echoes of decades of suffering. Built in the 1930s, Larundel was designed to treat mental illness, but the treatments often became a source of terror. Patients were confined for years, sometimes decades, enduring harsh therapies and isolation. Some never saw the light of day again. When the asylum closed in the late 1990s, many thought the horrors ended. They were wrong. The buildings remained abandoned, windows shattered, floors warped, graffiti painting sorrow across the walls. But something lingered. Shadows that moved without bodies, cold spots that clung to corridors, and whispers that carried through empty rooms, all signs that the past had not left. In 2012, photographer Liam entered Larundel at dusk. He carried only a flashlight and a camera, determined to capture the asylum's history. The main corridor stretched endlessly, lined with peeling paint and rusted doors. Each step echoed louder than it should have. He paused at the old music room, once a place where patients played piano for therapy. The piano sat in dust, keys broken and strings rusted. Then, a single note rang out, soft, slow, like a sigh. Liam froze. His flashlight flickered. Through the lens of his camera, he saw her, a young woman in a hospital gown, transparent, smiling through the dust. Her head tilted as if listening, lips moving silently, whispering something he could not hear. Liam's heart raced. When he snapped the photo, she vanished, leaving only the echo of her melody. Locals say it was Sarah, a patient who loved music above all else, playing until her last breath. Even today, those who pass Larundel after dark report hearing faint piano notes, carried on the wind. Sometimes, a shadow flits past the trees, or a cold hand brushes against their shoulder. The asylum may be empty, but the lost souls within never truly left. At Larundel, the past plays on, a melody of despair and sorrow, a lullaby for the forgotten. And if you listen closely, the notes might call to you too. 7. Royal Derwent Hospital, Willow Court, New Norfolk, Tasmania. Some places do not just hold history, they hold pain. And Willow Court, part of the Royal Derwent Hospital, is one of the darkest. Built in the early 1800s, it began as a humble refuge for the sick. But over decades, it became a maze of wards and cells where the unwanted were locked away. Men, women, even children, all called patients, yet many were simply forgotten souls trapped behind stone walls that never stopped listening. Locals say the screams never truly ended. They sank into the floors, seeping into every brick, every hallway. The buildings still stand, crumbling and decayed, but some nights the echoes return with frightening clarity. In 2009, paranormal investigator Emily spent a night in the ladies' ward, notorious for violent hauntings. Cameras and recorders in hand, she laughed nervously with her team. But as midnight struck, the laughter died. The air turned icy. Footsteps dragged slowly down the hall, uneven and heavy. Doors slammed without cause. Lights flickered, and shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. A faint, trembling voice whispered, "Help me, they won't let me leave." Emily felt cold hands brush her arms, but when she turned, no one was there. Shadows seemed to reach for her, lingering just out of reach. Her recorder captured sobs and whispers, layered over one another, creating a chorus of despair that sent shivers down her spine. Locals believe these voices belong to forgotten women, some buried in unmarked graves on the property. At night, visitors claim to feel soft sobbing echoing through the abandoned corridors, and cold drafts that pass through walls as if someone invisible is walking beside them. Even during the day, the halls exude a weight of sorrow. Broken windows reflect ghostly shapes, doors creak as if moved by unseen hands, and sometimes, faint footsteps echo from empty rooms. At Willow Court, the suffering never left. The walls remember every cry. The shadows still roam freely. And those who dare step inside may feel the lost souls brush past, silently urging them to leave, before they become part of the haunting as well. Willow Court is more than an abandoned hospital. It is a mausoleum of memories, a prison of pain, a place where the past refuses to die. And if you listen closely, you might hear them whisper your name, inviting you to join them in the darkness. 8. Z Ward, Glenside Hospital, Adelaide, South Australia. They called it Z Ward, a place for the criminally insane. But behind its high stone walls, justice was scarce. Instead, there was only silence, fear, and something far darker lurking in the shadows. Built in 1885 as part of Glenside Lunatic Asylum, Z Ward was designed to hold the most dangerous and disturbed patients in South Australia. Thick iron doors, barred windows, and echoing corridors swallowed every scream, every desperate cry. Over the decades, hundreds were confined here, murderers, outcasts, the broken and forgotten. But the true terror wasn't the patients. It was what the building became, a prison for souls, where madness festered and anguish never died. In 2014, night watchman David was hired to guard the newly restored building. He didn't believe in ghosts, only creaking pipes and the occasional rat. But as the clock struck midnight, he heard laughter, deep, hollow, impossible. It echoed through the west wing, calling him forward. Each step he took made the sound grow louder. When he reached cell 17, the laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by a whisper that chilled his blood. "You're late, doctor." David shone his flashlight inside. Empty. No one there. Yet a figure lingered in the corner, tall, thin, face hidden in shadow. Its presence pressed on him like a physical weight. The whisper repeated, closer this time, unnervingly human but impossibly wrong. He ran. The heavy door slammed behind him, trapping him for a moment in darkness. The figure vanished, but David said he could still feel its gaze, cold and relentless. He quit the same night. Today, Z Ward is open for ghost tours and historical visits. Visitors report sudden cold spots, faint voices, and a feeling of being watched. Some say they hear footsteps that don't match their own, and the faint laughter of a man no one alive should be able to hear. Locals believe the ward holds the echoes of the most tortured minds, forever trapped. Z Ward didn't just house the criminally insane, it absorbed them. Their pain lingers, roaming the halls, whispering through the iron bars, reminding anyone who dares to enter that sanity here is a fragile illusion. At Z Ward, the insanity never left. It only learned how to wait. And if you listen closely, you might hear it calling your name, inviting you to become the next visitor who never truly leaves. 9. Mont Park Hospital for the Insane, McLeod, Victoria. High on the hills of McLeod, Mont Park Hospital once stood like a city within a city. Its long red brick corridors and grand buildings promised healing, but inside, hope went to die. Built in 1912 to treat soldiers returning from war, men broken not by bullets, but by memories, Mont Park became a place where despair thrived. Shock treatments, ice baths, and solitary confinement were routine. Patients who cried too loud were silenced, until the silence swallowed them completely. By the 1960s, hundreds had died within its walls. Many were buried on the grounds, their names lost to time. Even after the hospital closed, locals claimed the earth itself still whispered their pain, a soft hum of sorrow that refused to fade. In 2018, Ryan, a psychology student, explored the ruins for a documentary. Equipped with only a flashlight and a recorder, he entered the main ward just before sunset. The air was thick, heavy, almost alive, filled with the weight of memories no one had released. As he walked down a long corridor lined with peeling paint and rusted doors, faint footsteps echoed behind him. He spun around, nothing. Then, a soft, rhythmic tapping grew louder ahead. From the end of the hall appeared shadows in tattered uniforms. Pale faces, hollow eyes, moving in silence, marching as if replaying a routine etched in eternity. One figure, a young soldier with half his face bandaged, stepped forward. His trembling lips whispered, "Help us get home." The voice, barely audible, carried the weight of decades, grief and desperation intertwining. Ryan stumbled backward, heart pounding, as the shadows dissolved into the walls. Yet on the recorder, the faint sound of marching boots remained. Later, when he reviewed the footage, dozens of pale, ghostly figures appeared, frozen mid-step, their eyes empty yet filled with longing. Today, Mont Park's buildings are gone, replaced by schools and housing estates. But on quiet nights, locals still hear the echo of boots, marching endlessly through the streets, a spectral army trapped in time, forever wandering. At Mont Park, the war never truly ended. It moved inside the walls, lingering long after the patients and soldiers were gone. And if you stand on the hill when the wind is still, you might just hear them, calling, waiting, asking to be remembered. 10. Woolston Park Hospital, Woogaro Lunatic Asylum, Wackle, Queensland. By day, Woolston Park Hospital appears calm, sunlight reflecting off its sprawling lawns, trees swaying gently, a place of quiet history. But when night falls, the peace dies. The asylum remembers everything. Built in 1878, Woogaro Lunatic Asylum was home to thousands of patients society didn't understand, men, women, even children, locked behind iron doors and stone walls. Silence became the cruelest treatment. Patients were strapped to beds, administered drugs that erased memory, confined in rooms where time itself seemed to stop. The walls absorbed every scream, every plea, every whispered prayer, and never forgot. In 2016, night security guard Ethan patrolled the deserted administration wing during renovations. Alone, he felt the weight of decades pressing down. Around midnight, slow, deliberate footsteps echoed from the upper corridor. "Who's there?" he called, voice trembling. No answer. The air grew icy. At the end of the corridor stood a woman in a tattered hospital gown. Her hair fell over her pale face. In her hands, she clutched a patient ledger, pages fluttering as though moved by invisible hands. When she lifted her head, Ethan froze, hollow eyes, lips trembling, a whisper that cut through the cold, "We're still waiting for discharge." The lights flickered violently. Shadows seemed to crawl along the walls. Ethan stumbled backward, heart hammering, as the ghostly figure drifted closer. He ran, never looking back, but the whisper followed him down the stairwell, through the deserted halls, into the night. Later, when workers arrived in the morning, the patient ledger lay open on the floor, listing names of those who never left, who had never checked out. Staff report hearing faint voices counting, whispers echoing behind them, and sometimes footsteps that vanish as soon as you turn to see. Though part of the campus is now calm, gardens manicured, classrooms active, locals swear that after dark, Mont Park doesn't sleep. The spirits of those lost inside roam the halls, searching for a release that never comes. Some souls never leave. Some horrors never die. At Mont Park, the past is alive, watching, waiting. And if you wander too close after sunset, you might hear a whisper, soft but insistent. "Don't leave us again." The asylum stands silent now, but the echoes never fade. Walls that once heard every scream still remember. Footsteps that should have ended wander the empty halls. The patients may be gone, but their cries linger, carried by the wind through broken corridors. Some souls never leave. Some horrors never die. And somewhere, in the shadows, they are still watching, waiting. Will you dare to return, and face what still lingers in the darkness?